I truly hope that the Stargood team manages to find a time to translate the next game in the series and possibly beyond. Did I manifest this somehow? A few months back, I looked at the original Galaxy Fraulein Yuna on the PC Engine, a rather obscure VN, at least in the West, that got a fan translation nearly 30 years after it originally came out. To recap my thoughts on that, it's basically the perfect VN if you're looking for a fun and comfy retro romp with a cute and simple story, a wonderful cast of characters, and enough magical girl and mecha shenanigans to satisfy a woman of culture such as myself. Apparently, quite a few other people felt the same way as I did about it, and 3 years later, Red Company and Wilco found time in between putting out early AAA titles and genre classics to give us Galaxy Ojo-sama Densetsu Yuna 2, and No Princess, or in English, Galaxy Fraulein Yuna 2, The Eternal Princess. If you've played the original title, then you know that game ended in a pretty clean way with no questions needing to be answered. Well, frankly, it didn't ask any. I'm sure there's some earlier titles out there that could be considered moe-gay, but Yuna is the earliest I know of with its cast of cute characters doing cute and fun things, with little more to say than friendship is good and robots are cool. Which, hey, I agree with, and I had a great time reading it, so that begs the question, was this sequel worth the 3-year wait? After defeating the 13 Frauleins of Darkness, and darkness itself at the end of the first game, all is seemingly as it should be. Everyone who was once fighting for evil powers has gone back to living a normal, comfy life, Elner and the Forces of Light have gone back into hiding, Leah's continued to pursue her career as an actress playing the role of the brave warrior of love Polylena, and Yuna's gone back to a normal life, going to school and dealing with all the trials that come with that. And that includes working around rivals like Erika, a girl who lost the Galaxy Fraulein contest to Yuna in the first game and despises her for it, going as far as to build an entire goddamn school in front of Yuna just to show how cool she is and spite her. I admire that dedication. It doesn't take long for everything to go south, however, as when Yuna, Erika, and her group called the Erika 7 go on a school trip to the moon, a petty argument in front of some ruins leads to the floor crumbling and an ancient beacon being activated, and with it, the robot girl Yuri Cube springing to life. She explains to Yuna that the beacon she activated belongs to the Eternal Princess, a mysterious and powerful being who exists to find warfare in alien races and defeat them to preserve peace. Apparently, Yuna's argument in front of that beacon was warfare enough for it to go off, and the princess to determine Earth has to be obliterated. To make matters even worse, the Eternal Princess has taken the Erika 7 and forced them to do her chaotic good bidding? Chaotic evil? So it's once again up to Yuna to defeat evil, this time with the help of the insatiably hungry Yuri Cube, the very much mysterious Polylena, and her friends from the last adventure, and save the universe. First things first, the thing most apparent about this game from the moment you boot it up is that the production values have gone way up, with a whole-ass orchestrated CD audio score and tons of beautifully illustrated pixel art outlining the intro and introducing our villain. Given that this was in development way after Tengai Makyo 2, also developed by Red and generally considered the first AAA game ever made, as well as the very impressive and well-beloved Tengai Makyo Fun Kabuki Den, it's safe to say the studio as a whole knew the PC Engine dang well on how to make a title that really pushed it to its limits in the most stylish ways possible. Though they're only partly responsible for the game since Will Company did a lot of the programming and heavy lifting like with the first title, it's frankly kind of hard to tell who's exactly responsible for what here. No matter the case, it also probably helps this game had more than like 6 or 8 months in development. It just feels way more refined as a whole, and that stretches to the story. If you enjoyed the cute and peppy antics of the first game, then you'll feel right at home here. This is a sequel in the truest sense, building off of the foundation of the first title and trying some new things out, but ultimately being familiar, and I'm good with that. I liked the original for how fun and feel good it was, and while this goes for that too, it also manages to address some of my complaints I had with the original. The absolute biggest improvement that Yuna 2 makes is the way the UI is integrated. Rather than be a small set of defined and constant nouns, being move, look, and talk, what's available at any given time to the player is dialed back to what's actually useful to progress. Like, if there's no reason for you to move away from where you are, then you just simply don't have the option to move, and this hugely cuts down on the tedium of progression in the first game. That just boiled down to trying every option over and over again until the game let you through, to the point where I kinda questioned why it wasn't just a kinetic novel. That isn't the case here, since the interaction works both to keep the player engaged by giving a modicum of control, as well as to aid the humor. There are a lot of prompts that exist solely to serve a gag, and it's frankly some of the best use of adventure game elements I've seen in an older VN. A lot of them are also pretty gay, and I'm all here for that. While Yuna 1 gave off some of those vibes with its almost all-female cast, well, this is your first prompt in this game. I think what makes these elements work so much better here than in a lot of 90s anime media is that none of it is played for jokes or eroticism. Yuna just casually admits girls are pretty or attractive with nothing more to it, and even in how the ending has some of the main girls fight over who gets to have her, the joke is the absurdity of what's happening and just how tired Yuna is of women fighting over her affection, not that she's a lesbian. The humor in general has this very playful and silly sense to it that is frankly the best of 90s anime. Lots of goofy slapstick, visual gags, and absurd situations. It's all very self-aware of what kind of game and story it is without being ironic, insincere, or cruel about its humor. Just indulging in the fun you can have with a cute and simple girl saving the world plot. There were more than a few times I was smiling from ear to ear, and I don't want to spoil any of it for people curious about playing. None of that would be anything if the characters were bad, of course, and not only is the crew here a lot of fun, but the character building and general writing quality has been taken up a notch. As fun as everyone was in the first VN, you could boil any given person down to a single trait. Leah was cool, Eleanor was motivated, Yuna was airheaded, and so on, so I was happy to see that there's some genuine depth and growth for the main cast as the story goes on. Between the ending of the first game and the start of this one, Yuna's become more of just an average and slightly dim girl instead of blindingly and amusingly stupid, and over the course of this game she grows emotionally and intellectually while still being the kind, friendship-loving airhead I came to know and love. She still has her moments of stupidity and denseness, but all around she's a much more engaging and relatable character. Her android companion here isn't as interesting, but I would still call Yuri a really likable character. She is the purest of girls, the sweetest of sweethearts, and also dense as a brick with a ridiculous appetite. Normally I can't stand characters like this. I don't think Eats a Ton is a funny character trait, but I think she's both pretty adorable and interesting for how she moves the story along and behaves a lot like Yuna did before. She's clumsy, she screws stuff up constantly, but still ultimately helps a lot and has her heart in the right place, but the frustration this causes Yuna and the way she learns to accept her friends' problems leads to some great character development on both ends. The side characters are also all wonderful here, with many of them returning from the first game. It put a smile on my face to see Shiori and Mai returning in minor roles. Yuna's parents are wonderfully unaware of everything around them as always, and Leah is just the absolute best. Man, I love how she's basically Tuxedo Mask from Sailor Moon, down to our story's main character being hilariously incapable of figuring out who she is when playing her character. I can't exactly say that Erika's group has much going on though. Just like the first game's Frauleins of Darkness, they can all be boiled down to a singular thing. Sports girl, idol girl, racing girl, and so on. Though I don't think that's inherently bad, and the interactions Yuna has with them are just as fun as before. Frankly, I think what surprised me the most story-wise is the fact that the villains actually have something going on now. Even the big bad of the story, Princess Mirage, is more than just an evil thing out to destroy the universe. She's not exactly complex per se, and isn't all that different from your typical AI gone rogue sci-fi trope, but I'm happy with what the writers went for here, and the fact that there's some genuine depth introduces, well, stakes, intrigue, and even real themes to the story. They're not deep, like it's basically just friendship is good and people can change, but it helps make the drama here feel more meaningful for both character and story progression, as well as making the villains, like, actually compelling? It wasn't more than enough to get me legit drawn into what was happening and wanting to know what was going to happen next. To me at least, it seems like this game is trying to gently nudge the franchise into being more serious, which makes me very curious about where the third game might go. Well, that in fact is a whole-ass SRPG seemingly on the Sakura Wars engine. Anyways, the world building is much improved too. The original is basically just a World of Hats thing, like the original Star Trek series, where each of the worlds Yuna goes to has a theme and nothing else. You got your jungle planet, beach planet, cyberpunk planet, and so on. And, well, they sorta did the same thing here. You not only learn much more about each planet, but they also feel much more interconnected thanks to exposition and some actual genuine world building that had me invested in them. The result is a world that feels much more cohesive and strung together instead of just a series of places you go to fight a maiden. If there is one thing they didn't improve though, it's the gameplay. So quick recap, Yuna 1 used this weird pseudo-RPG combat system where you could defend, do a physical attack that hit inconsistently but did big damage, or throw silly insults out that did consistent but vaguely less big damage, and used gauge that had to be refilled at the cost of a turn. It was simple and not very good, but it functioned. Yuna 2 changed things up, and while it's far better on paper, it's far worse in execution. Once you encounter one of the Erika 7, you enter into combat where you're dealt 4 cards of varying types, which are physical attack, verbal debuff, heal, defend, partner call-in, stun, and wild card, roughly in order of rarity that I have observed. Anytime you use one of your 4 cards, it's replaced with another one of a random type. Your opponent plays by the same rules, except they're incapable of calling in a partner to fight for them for a short time. It is entirely RNG based what cards you get, and therefore, battles themselves are relatively luck based. There is some strategy in saving cards for later use, saving your friend cards for when you're low on HP since Yuna does regen some while they're out, and some good guessing as to what they're going to play, so it's not a bad system at all in concept, and when it works like it does in the earlier fights, it's far more engaging than what the original game had to offer. On a scale of FF14's Cape Westwind to Drakengard Free's final boss in terms of frustration, the last 3 fights in this game definitely rank closer to the latter than they should. See, difficulty in these encounters comes from how much damage you and the enemy are able to deal to each other, and the battle against Erika towards the end represents a massive jump in the AI's favor, rendering them capable of dealing an 1/8 or more of your health bars worth of damage in a single hit, while you can basically just chip away at them, and this is if they don't land a crit thanks to a wild card, which, by the way, are also capable of removing one of your cards, providing massive heals, or doing a critical debuff, seemingly at a far greater rate than the player is capable of getting anything but a goddamn fail. Also, parrying is a thing because if you play a shield and the enemy uses an attack, you'll take no damage and attack them instead, but they can also do this, and with how RNG favors them, they can seemingly infinitely do this while you're stuck with nothing but attack cards, and you also can't see their cards and make any sort of informed decision, even though this is in the game as a debug function. And after spending half an hour on her boss and winning purely because I won the RNG lotto on one run and got infinite shields, I just ended up using the debug mode to skip the battle against Mirage right after her because I was not having it anymore. The worst part about this is the true final boss is kind of a joke, so much so that I forgot about it until I wrote this part of the script, because the Erika Mirage fight stuck in my mind as some of the worst bosses out there. There is seriously no shame in skipping any of the fights in this game with the debug menu if they get too rough. At least the combat doesn't totally suck for most of the game, because besides being fun when it does work, there's also some really great artwork here, and the dialogue for moves range from fun quips to genuinely funny lines with great delivery. This is also where the ecchi elements were snuck in if you care about that. Those stun cards you'll rarely get can break an opponent's armor and play a fittingly lewd animation. It's a thing, I suppose. I don't know, I'd play it Erika if I wanted that. There are also some other minigames you'll get to play, but they're not nearly as aggravating, and failure doesn't matter in them. There's also first-person dungeon crawling for some reason. It's neat to see on the platform, but it feels like it's here just to show off what the art and programming teams could do more than anything, which frankly isn't necessary because this game already looks gorgeous. I think this is straight up one of the best looking games on the system and one of the best of the 16-bit consoles. It's vibrant and beautiful, detailed and stylish, and very much rivals the quality of art one would be seeing in PC games of the time. Much of the staff here would later work on anime you've probably seen or at least heard of, and assistance was given by JC staff, who you might know for, as well as creating the 2 OVAs that bridge the gap between this game and the series' third entry, the first of which got used for the PCFX game, which, we'll talk about that sometime. It's kind of awful. I absolutely love the character designs too. Yuna's casual outfit is ridiculously cute, Yuri is just precious and perfect, and everyone else ranges from cute and lovable to pretty and gorgeous. Mika Akitaka knocked it out of the park with this one, as did the rest of the art team. The music is equally as good too, and there's way better use of it here. I don't think there's any more music than there was in the original title, but tracks are used far more carefully, so there's no more problems with hearing the same song for half an hour straight, and the tunes themselves are catchier too. The voice acting is also fantastic like before, with a lot more names that would go on to be famous. Yumi Toma, Akiko Yajima, Yuko Mizutani. It's really neat to see these people early on in their career and absolutely killing it with their performances. And yeah, that's Galaxy Fraulein Yuna 2. It's cute and silly and all kinds of fun for its short duration, with some fantastic art and sounds to boot. It's a big improvement over the original and basically just a pure dose of dopamine, so if you like moege with cute magical girls, pretty pixel art, janky gameplay, and a great sense of humor, then I can't think of many titles that fit that oddly precise series of requirements better than this. I also want to give props to the Stargood team. Just like before, they did an outstanding job getting this game into English, with an all-around fantastic translation and attention to detail. Man, between this, the Bulk Slash fan dub, Racing Lagoon's incredible translation, and all the other great ones like Community Palm, Edu, Bahamut Lagoon, and the countless HuCard PC Engine games, I think 2021 has been one of the best years ever for fan translations, and I really can't wait to see what the next year brings. I hope there's even a slight chance that Yuna's last video game outing is somewhere in someone's cards, because this game made me really dang happy to play. It's cute and cozy, fun and action-packed, aesthetically fantastic, and orally enriching. It's just a great game well worth your time, even with its flaws.